Welcome back. After 8 somewhat contentious years dealing with a national health pandemic and a spendthrift General Assembly dominated by the opposition party, Republican Governor Larry Hogan delivered his final address this week. After highlighting accomplishments such as implementing tax cuts that have helped the middle class, increasing spending on education, reducing the state's budget deficit, and leading the state safely through the COVID pandemic, Mr. Hogan warned against engaging in toxic politics that are dividing many Americans. Laurie, as a rule of thumb, during a Maryland governor's first year in office, not much is accomplished. But given the progressive nature of the General Assembly and its avowed legislative proposals to, finish what they started last year, including a constitutional amendment to change the current abortion law, which would allow late-term abortions, legalizing the approved ballot initiative on recreational use of marijuana, and even passing more gun control restrictions. Are we going to see an active General Assembly this year?
I think we'll see a lot more action than we did if we had a Republican governor take office. But I'm not sure, because yesterday I was in Annapolis with over 20 ladies from the Republican Party, and we were going around the offices and giving them our priority list. And they were all moving in boxes everywhere. The newly elected delegates didn't even have a computer set up yet. So they're still just getting set up right now. But I think they'll get going. And I think, there's a lot of new appointments and new leaders with new responsibilities. I have to say, when we stopped at Mark Corman's office, he was very, very organized. I didn't see any boxes in their room, so they got the award for the most organized of all the people we visited.
Mark is always very well organized.
Yeah, it was very, very impressed with their office. But I think that the priorities are going to be where the money is. So I think, the cannabis is huge now that we've voted to pass it. So I think we're going to see some action there, because they really must make some changes or, make some legislation in order to get things moving. And I doubt, though, we'll see much business expansion with the appointment of Susan Lee as the Secretary of State. I don't quite understand that appointment. So I don't see much expansion in business, but I do think that we'll see the cannabis industry, though, we'll see some changes, some improvements to that. And I doubt we'll see that much in education, even though that's
Laurie, we're kind of losing you there, Laurie. So I'm going to go on to Mike. Mike, among the agendas proffered by candidate Moore when running for governor was to leave no one behind, help Baltimore. Oh my gosh, we always have to help Baltimore, and save the environment. Now, these are wonderful ideas and wonderful aspirations, but what can actually be accomplished during this shortened legislative season?
Sure. I mean, I think one of the things I've been very impressed with so far with the Moore-Miller campaign is their efforts in transition. And I think they're very mindful of the fact that they recognize that there's campaigning and there's governing. And what they've been working very hard over the last 7 weeks to be able to do is to identify a blueprint for what are those steps to take those ideas and actually make them governable and actionable. And I think I was reading in a couple of pieces the other day where the reporters have been alluding to the fact that the governor has not necessarily outlined his key priorities yet. There have been some insinuations, and clearly the legislatures has started to take their priorities out there. But I think that the governor-elect is really looking to make sure that he has clear, actionable steps in each of those areas so that there is progress that can be made. And so I think you will see progress in things like Laurie was talking about with cannabis. That's got to get done, and hopefully we'll address that in a way that doesn't dilute that as a market. We're seeing many, many states right now where they thought this was great. You had cannabis organizations that were popping up all over the place, businesses all over the place that are now actually closing because there's not as much demand as there once was. So hopefully we can figure out how to do that in a way that's both equitable and makes market sense. But I think looking at things as it relates to workforce development and really beginning to make expansions there, looking at taking environmental steps, I think we can build upon where we've been in opening the state for business. I think that we can continue to focus on that. We're an attractive place to do business, and I think people will be excited, especially once they kind of hear the governor's mission. But I think what he's been very mindful of is let's lay out that plan, and I think in the coming weeks we're going to hear those actionable steps, not just campaigning platitudes.
So Laurie, are you back online? Let's just check to see check your sound.
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can.
Okay.
So, for years, it's not surprising, that many of Governor Hogan's vetoes were overridden by the General Assembly. And of course, having, the trifecta of the governor's mansion as well as both houses, who's going to act as a counterbalance to rein in some of the more I guess, progressive ideas, when it comes to taxation and it comes to pushing social issues? Can the Republican minority really mount any kind of speed bump in the road to these
Well,
bills being
yeah,
passed?
what we really have to hope for is that citizens will come forward and testify and really really let our voices be heard. If they hear from a lot of Republicans who are opposed to many of these initiatives, I think that we will see some action. But we need to not scatter ourselves around. We need to figure out what are the priorities and focus on those, or we'll get nothing done. So, and there are issues I think that we can work together on. I think we all care about education. We all want to see children reading and writing at grade level, yet the blueprint for education does not even have that requirement. So that, we can work together and find common ground.
Mike, any final thoughts before we?
I would just augment what Laurie was talking about as it relates to education. I heard a presentation from former County Executive Ike Leggett this past week who's leading the efforts in the blueprint. And I think focusing on getting, really making sure that we are highly competitive in the educational space is a key priority, both of that blue ribbon panel and of the governor. And I think it's exciting to see what we can do in education in this state.
Thanks both of you.